A liquidity tsunami is coming, a $5 trillion wave about to hit Bitcoin and stocks. But right now, they're staring at Trump, they're staring at the tariffs, they're staring at the headlines, but they're missing the real driver behind markets. It's quiet, it's hidden, and it moves prices with a 3-month lag. And if you miss it, then you're just replaying the Q1 crash. But if you catch it, you're perfectly positioned for what's about to unfold.
마크모스는 미국의 금융 전문가이자 경제순환, 금융 역사, 중앙은행 정책, 비트코인과 암호화폐를 중심으로 일반 대중이 복잡한 경제 흐름을 쉽게 이해할 수 있도록 설명하는 크리에이터입니다. 그는 주로 비트코인과 탈중 앙화의 미래, 미국 및 글로벌 금융시장 분석, 연준의 금리 정책 등에 대한 주제를 다루고 비트코인을 단순한 투자 수단을 넘어 금융 시스템의 대안으로 보고 있습니다. 마크모스는 사람들이 트럼프와 관세에만 집중하는 동안 시장이 진짜 동력을 놓치고 있다고 지적합니다. 그가 얘기하는 진짜 핵심 동력이 무엇인지, 무엇을 주목해야 하는지 들어보겠습니다.
Alright, so we're going to jump right in to show you what the undercurrent is that's driving markets. Because of course, we're all worried about Trump and tariffs, and of course I've been doing lots of videos on that because it's very important. But if you watch those other videos on tariffs, and what I've been saying is that tariffs isn't really the objective, it's a lever to get other things done, some really, really big things done. They are a lever to make something else happen. But really there's something underneath the undercurrent that's really driving everything. But let's just start here. The first 100 days of Trump's term. Here we are in the first 100 days, and it has been turbulent, to say the least, right? Lots of noise. Maybe he's an idiot. Maybe he doesn't know what he's doing. Maybe, we don't know. But what we do know is that we've seen 10 days and $10 trillion market swings. So we've been seeing massive volatility as things go up and down, as Trump is basically trying to reorganize the entire global monetary system. Not a small feat. Now, we can see that in that time, I've put this green mark here, we can see that the markets came all the way down, came back up, went down, went back up, and currently right now, they're down about 10%. This is the S&P 500. Down about 10%. Now, with all of this happening, and he's an idiot, he's wrecking the economy and all these things, we're down 10%. Now, just for a little bit of historical perspective, here we were down 10% here we were down 6% here we were down 10% here we were down 10% here. You see, 10% isn't all that uncommon. So we're seeing that, but yes, it has been volatile, it's been back and forth. But here's the thing. While that has been wiped out, there's an undercurrent that really shows us what's really going on. And this is what you need to know if you want to navigate these markets. Okay, so if you really want to navigate these markets like a true pro, then you need to know what you're looking at. Now, if you've been watching my videos for any amount of time, then you know I always talk about liquidity. Liquidity is what drives asset prices. So we want to keep our eyes on liquidity. So let me show you what I'm talking about. In 2024, last year, before Trump took office, in the last quarter 4 of 2024, we saw declining liquidity. Liquidity was draining out of the system, and that pushed asset prices down. Now, for the first quarter of 2025, Q1, we've seen rising liquidity. All right, now I'm going to use a bunch of charts from Michael Howell, but what we can see here is here's 2024, and what we can see here in September of 2024, we had a high of global liquidity at $175 trillion. 175 trillion. And what we can see is through the end of 2024, we went from 175, 173, 172, 171. Liquidity was draining out of the system. And you're like, but Mark, that is last year. We're talking about the last, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Okay, we'll come back to that. So liquidity is draining down. Then here we have 2025. And we started January with 171, obviously carrying over. 171, 171, 172, 172, 172, 172, 173, 174, 174, 176. Liquidity's been going up. Now you're saying, but Mark, I don't understand this because you're saying liquidity went down last year, but the price has been going down this year, but you're saying prices are going down when liquidity is going up. I don't understand what's going on. Well, let me break it down for you. So we have $176 trillion of global liquidity as of last week per Michael Howell. That is a positive gain of $5 trillion. $5 trillion year to date has been added. That's how much it's gone up. The reason why you're not understanding the linkage is because there's about a 10 to 12 week lag in between that. So liquidity draining out in Q4 of last year, we saw the impacts of it in Q1 of 2025, mostly towards the end because of the lag. All the liquidity we've seen rush in this year, this first quarter, will be seen next quarter. And we're already starting to see that. Let me show you a couple charts here. So here's a couple more charts from Michael Howell. And here we have global liquidity mapped out from June of 2021. We'll just put 21 right here. Now, I started using this chart right around here. If you've been watching my channel for any amount of time, you know that when the whole world was going to end and everyone needs to get out of the markets back in 2022, because it was the low right here, I started making videos. Go check out my channel. I said there is no market crash coming. Here's why. It's time to start buying. Here's why I'm buying new assets. And it's because I understood this. And since then, the markets have been on an absolute tear because that was the bottom of liquidity. Now, these things typically move in a 4-year cycle. We've had about 4 good years of runs. Nothing goes up and down in a straight line, obviously. We've had 4 good straight years of runs. Now, let me zoom in a little bit and look a little bit closer. I want you to see this. So here's what we have now over the last year. So what we had is last year, 2024, the last quarter, liquidity was draining down. And the first quarter of this year, it's going up. And this is what we're talking about, the $5 trillion that we'll see next quarter. But let's just take a look at this and see how else we can see this data. So here is the Dixie, the dollar index, and it measures the dollar against other currencies. Now this goes back until 2019. And what we can see is that the dollar got stronger into 2020, then it got weaker, then it got really strong into 2022, which is when liquidity drained out and asset prices crashed. And then as the dollar got weaker, liquidity went up, asset prices went up, we chopped back and forth, and you can see as of right now, Q1, well, let's look here. Q4 of last year, I'll write that here, Q4 of last year, draining. Q1 of this year, it's been going down, which means liquidity has been rushing back in. Now we can see this in asset prices if we look at Bitcoin, for example, right here. Same time period. So we can see when the dollar index went down, liquidity went up, Bitcoin went down. It dropped down. We can see here that last quarter, as the dollar index got stronger, liquidity went down, Bitcoin dropped with it. And now, we can't really see it here, but now Bitcoin has made a big turnaround. I think it's up 10, 12% in just like the last 2 days. And you can see the same thing in NASDAQ. Over the same time period, you see the same movement as the dollar and the global liquidity moves up and down, the prices come up, it drops down, and now we're starting to revert because that first quarter liquidity is just starting to come into the system. All right, now we have to understand these metrics and how this works on a lag so we can really start to position ourselves, because what we're seeing right now is a lot of people are fearful. A lot of people are exited out of the system. A lot of people are waiting for the next leg to drop. They think the world is coming to an end, like as if the world is more uncertain than it was in the pandemic of 2020 when the whole world was going to die and shipping lanes and businesses were shut down, or it's more uncertain than it was in 2008 when the great financial crash, the global financial system melted down. Certainly not. Bitcoin is similar, except for it's a fixed supply, not a scarce supply, right? There will never be more than 21 million, which makes it much more sensitive. Not to mention, not just because of the scarcity, but also because of the size of the market cap. It's much harder to move a $14 trillion market cap than it is a $2 trillion market cap. So we can see that Bitcoin is very similar, except for in this case, it's also much more sensitive because of the liquidity and the overall size. And again, we have the global liquidity in the orange line right here. And we can see how we're ticking up right here, but the Bitcoin price hasn't responded yet. Why? Oh yeah, because there's a 3-month lag. So this right here in January, we'll start to see right here in April. We already have. We've already gone from about 80 to over 90,000 in just 2 days. So we're starting to see this moving in really, really rapidly. Now we can see this. Here's another chart from Raoul Pal, and he shows this in a similar way, but he adjusts it for the lag. So for example, what we have right here in the white line is we have the global liquidity adjusted for a 12-week lag. And then in the green line, we have Bitcoin. And what we can see is that they overlay almost exactly when you adjust it for the 3-month lag. And what we can see is that we've been in this bottoming zone right here, both in the Bitcoin price and the global liquidity, because, as I said, it was drained out last quarter. And now that global liquidity is taking off, we're seeing already the Bitcoin price is following it. So you can see this over and over and over through all of these charts. Now, I want to just draw your attention back. But the reason why we talk about what Scott Bessent is doing and Howard Lutnick is doing and Trump is doing is because they're trying to do something monumental. They're trying to change the entire global monetary system. And they're using tariffs to do this and using trade negotiations to do this. But there's a couple things that I want to draw your attention to. Mainly, read and listen. Why? Because typically we've had, politicians and Fed board governors, they try to sort of hide what they're doing. They try to mislead us so we don't front run the markets, we don't front run them. But the Trump administration has done something much differently. They're laying it all out there for you. And if you read and listen to it, you'll hear exactly what they're having to say. Trump's head of his economic advisory board, Hudson Bay Capital, wrote this executive summary in November of 2024 when Trump was running for president, when he was winning the presidential cycle before he was there. It lays out exactly what Trump is doing to a T. Basent is talking about it. Now, what we can hear now is that, well, if you read the report, the goal was to push the tariffs and then bring them back. Use the tariffs for negotiations and bring them back. And already this is exactly what we're seeing. All over the news headlines are, Trump's caving, he's always gonna cave. Yeah, that was always the plan. If you read The Art of the Deal, you anchor high, you negotiate off with us. It was in the report right here. In this video last night, Scott Basent was saying, hey, we have these deals. They're coming together. We've got the negotiations. And while everybody's focused on that, on 2D chess, the undercurrent is the global liquidity that's really driving things. And regardless of what happens here, we know more liquidity is rushing into the system. That's why I've been talking about it over and over and over for the last 2 years now or so. If we keep our eyes focused on that and sort of start to ignore the noise, we can see what liquidity is doing and we have time. We have a 3-month lag to get in position or out of position. Now you're out of time because now the tide's already rushing back in. Bitcoin's already up over $10,000. If you miss those $10,000 days, you miss most of your gains. So we want to get in a position before the tide runs, not after.
마크모스는 유동성이 자산 가격을 움직이는 핵심 동력이라고 강조하며 유동성 변화에 주목해야 한다고 말합니다. 2024년 4분기 유동성 감소로 자산 가격이 하락했고 2025년 1분기 유동성 증가는 다음 분기에 영향을 미칠 것이라고 예측합니다. 이러한 유동성 변화가 시차를 두고 시장에 반영될 것이라고 강조하고 있으며 5조 달러 규모의 유동성이 비트코인과 주식시장을 덮칠 것이라고 얘기하고 있죠. 결론적으로 비트코인은 이미 상승세에 접어든 것이고 상승 추세를 놓치지 않기 위해 유동성 흐름을 주시해야 한다고 조언합니다. 우리는 객관적인 시각으로 투자를 해야 하고 지금 당장만 보고 투자할 게 아니라 미래를 보고 투자를 해야겠죠. 010-2472-0429 전화번호로 탈겜이 적어서 문자 보내주시면 2025년 비트코인과 코인 시장에 대한 분석, 정보들 공유해드리겠습니다. 현재 우리에게 중요한 것은 이러한 정보를 어떻게 활용할 것인가입니다. 지금까지 영상 시청해주셔서 감사하고요. 다음에 더 좋은 영상으로 찾아뵙겠습니다. 감사합니다.